Hey everybody, it's Dat Rant here, and I've risen from my grave after deleting all my videos to talk about Baldur's Gate 3. Just a disclaimer before the video starts, there will be spoilers for all of Baldur's Gate 3, and everything I say in this video is just my opinion, so if you don't agree with it, well, sorry, I can't change that. This video is just going to be me giving my thoughts about the game's story and characters, so if you don't like listening to people talk about their opinions for an hour, especially subhuman creatures like teenagers, then I'd say this probably isn't the video for you. I know, wow, big surprise, who's shocked? Not me that I'm here talking about Baldur's Gate 3. I wanted to make this before the Game Awards came out, so let's see if I can actually get that done. Because if Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't win Game of the Year, we're gonna have some serious problems. It's going against Spider-Man 2 and Resident Evil 4. I know there's a Mario game in there and the new Zelda game which came out. And I really don't think that any of those would win Game of the Year over Baldur's Gate 3. But, the Game Awards would probably give it to the freaking Mario game. I wouldn't be surprised. So, not to beat a dead horse or anything, but I'm gonna beat a dead horse and say Larian Studios has given us what AAA companies have said they've been giving us for years. But now we know what a actual fully developed, fleshed out game is, so that's crazy. As a huge RPG open world game fan, this is literally what I've been waiting for since I played Skyrim at the ripe age of 8. Up until Baldur's Gate, I thought Skyrim was the epitome of RPGs, even though I knew in my heart that it could get better than that. I'm not even a Bethesda ride or die stan. Yeah, they suck. Starfield. I don't even need to say anything because everyone already knows. But Baldur's Gate 3 managed to give us atmosphere, which is what Bethesda is mostly known for, and actual RPG elements where your choices matter and have consequences. So that's crazy. Literally every other open world game, take notes. Your choices, they say they matter, they don't. If you kill people, guess what? The story is affected. That's crazy. And yes, there are still some problems with Baldur's Gate 3. I won't deny that. Act 3, for which seems to be people's biggest issue, does feel a bit all over the place to me. There's a lot of different things going on at the same time, and there's some minor bugs, but that is a very minor complaint compared to AAA studios with enormous amounts of budgets and manpower continuously releasing buggy, unfinished messes that people just pre-order or buy on release and eat up with no complaints. So, gamers, rise up. We need to fight this. Open your eyes, please. Anyways, now on to my actual thoughts about the game. As far as story goes, I'd say it was a pretty good one. The most interesting to me wasn't necessarily the Mind Flayer part of it so much as the Dead 3 coming into the mix because, let's face it, gods are what make everything interesting. I'll just go ahead and talk about the Emperor here, since he was a pretty vital part to the actual main story, and let me tell you, I didn't trust a thing he was saying from the very beginning. The Dream Visitor being the Emperor reveal did have me gagged a bit. I wasn't expecting that. No one was expecting that. But to me, it was all his grand scheme of trying to manipulate us into listening to him and doing his bidding, which I know is a pretty heavy debated topic over on Reddit, and that's the side that I fall on. Emperor bad, Emperor morally gray, and let's not listen to him. He just kept doing and saying things that were very manipulative and very telling to what he was trying to do, especially in Act 3 after he revealed he wasn't a Lithid. It was kind of like the mask was off and, I guess he had nothing left to lose, so he was like, let's just do this. And then he was trying to rizz me up in the middle of me dealing with a ball murder plot. Like, dude, put your shirt back on. I don't have time for this. I've got more important things to do. On my character rankings, he was definitely low on the list. I don't care if he was saving us or not. He wasn't doing that for us. Why would you? To be fair, I'll give him that. But, come on. Really? My favorite part of the story was the Shadowlands part, so Act 2, which, unpopular opinion, I would say is my favorite act, because it had more of a linear direction and not an overwhelming amount of things to do, but still enough variety to where there's replayability. The Catherine boss fight was my favorite one in the game, hands down, even better than the final boss fight against the Netherbrain, which, in my opinion, was a little underwhelming. However, in the final fight, I liked that all the actions you took throughout this story culminated into this battle and gave you access to all the allies you made or didn't make, which again brings back into play like your choices actually matter. Look, you did these nice things, have a reward. But back to the Ketheric fight, Merkel's boss entrance went so hard, and he, like, that alone made him the best god, in my opinion. Shar and Mystra both had very pathetic meetings face to face with the companions, which I thought could have been done much grander than they were, because, hello, they're gods. Even with Ball and Bane, and I haven't done the Dirge playthrough yet, like, I haven't finished it, so I don't know if Ball is going to come and make a bigger, better appearance than Merkel, which I hope he would, since I know that's Ball is the main god of the Dirge playthrough. But, you know, Shar and Mystra, both gods, Bane and Ball, these are your chosen, and you're just going to let them, like, die? Okay. To me, the Act 1 story was pretty concise with lots of places to explore. The Act 2 story was more linear and had a clearer path on what you were supposed to do. And the Act 3 story was kind of just all over the place and a bit of everything, like I mentioned at the beginning. I do think the game would have benefited from an Act 4 to break up all the content in Act 3, because the problem for me wasn't that there isn't enough to do, rather there's too much to do. For me, it felt more like a huge checklist of all these things I had to do rather than things I stumbled upon organically, because literally, I mean, I get like all of the companion quest lines are going to be finished in this act, but then you immediately step foot into Baldur's Gate and it's like, you get exploded with all of these places that you need to go and all these things you need to do, and it's kind of like, okay, I guess I'll do it. I do know that there was the rumored Upper City that they cut, and I'm not 100% sure on the reason, or if it's even, like, if that reason's even out there, but presumably it's because the content just wasn't working, which is perfectly understandable. And there's a handful of different endings and different outcomes for all the companions, depending on the choices you made, so that's not something I can really talk about since I've only finished the game once. But I liked the way mine ended. I got all the stereotypical good endings, at least in my book. Carl and Carl. Why did I just say Carl? Karlach. I was combining their names. Karlach and Wyll went to Avernus together, which I think is a good ending. And I made Orpheus a mind flayer and let Lae'zel right off into the sunset, since I wasn't romancing her in that run, which might be the only thing that deviated from a good playthrough, but I think that's pretty tame to what I saw people saying they did for their ending. So overall, the story gets a good 8 out of 10 from me. As far as gameplay goes, the only thing I wanted to talk about really was the tadpoles and how using them or not using them comes with basically no consequences. The only tadpole that comes with consequences is the super tadpole the Emperor offers you in Act 3, which you can refuse. The only thing that happens, though, is you become half illithid, and I refused it because I didn't want to be ugly. Although I saw someone on Reddit say that they had been using the illithid powers, like the wisdom 2 roll check or whatever, for a lot of things, so then they didn't have the option to refuse it, like they couldn't, which I wasn't doing. So I think there was this like a roll that you had to do to refuse it, but mine wasn't like it wasn't like a big deal. I could refuse it. And you can also convince all of the companions to take the tadpoles with no consequences, even Lae'zel, whose entire being goes against being an illithid, which is an interesting choice. This was also my first tabletop RPG style game, aside from maybe, I guess, if you want to count like Final Fantasy VII Remake, but that is not a D&D RPG game. And I actually enjoyed the turn-based combat, and the fights were different every time because the environment was always different. So I enjoyed that. And there were a lot of little mechanics and little things that you can do within the game that just made it so much more believable and real. Like if if you or your companions were dirty and you threw water on yourselves, guess what? You were clean. Crazy, crazy to me, honestly. Now into the meat of the video, the characters. So first I'll start with Wyll because they really did him dirty. Like, oh my god, where's the content? Half of his content is split with Minthara because she's such a big part of his story. So it's kind of like two characters in one, which I know is supposed to be the point, like that's his patron, but his actual story could have been so much more than they made it, and a lot of it was centered around him and Minthara, not just him separately, which again I get would be a bit hard to separate the warlock and his patron, but I feel like they could have figured something out. If they had made him more of a chaotic neutral type of character and not the knight in shining armor, his storyline with Minthara could have been so much juicier and interesting. If they actually liked each other and he was doing questionable things sometimes because he wanted power and fame, which I heard like that early access Wyll was kind of like that, but I guess no one liked it, so they completely redid his entire character and story. But I think that would have been better than what they gave us, and I haven't seen anything about early access Wyll, so maybe I should go watch some clips and see if it really is a dumpster fire. But I think they could have just reworked it instead of completely U-hauling it. The whole allure of Wyll being a warlock is that his patron is a devil, and I feel that they hit on that in the wrong ways, because to me it would have been better if he wasn't so honorable and enjoyed doing Minthara's bidding because he loved the power she gave him, not because he wanted to protect the people of the Sword Coast, but because it made him better than everyone else, or something like that. I saw a thing on Reddit comparing all the characters' seen screen time, and it was either Wyll or Karlach at the bottom. And was I surprised? No. I'm sure that has something to do with the fact that they had to redo his story from early access, but I mean, you couldn't have at least given him a bit more than what he got. I haven't actually done the Wyll romance yet, but I watched his proposal scene, and I thought that was the epitome of romance. Sorry, that's adorable. I've been through the dancing scene 3 times now, and it's depressing every time I reject him. If I'm picking a favorite romance scene, it might be that dancing scene just because I've seen that so many times now. Or any of Lae'zel's, honestly. His dad? Horrible. Like, you want to disown your son for defending your city when you weren't even there? Okay. And then the resolution to his arc in Act 3, where you, the player, not Wyll, the player, gets to pick whether he broke his pact or not, was crazy, because every other companion had the option to make the choice themselves for the turning point in their arcs, but Wyll, which is a very odd choice, and I'm not sure why they did that, because if they had the ability, like the capability, to make it to where the other companion AI could make their own choice, I'm not sure why Wyll couldn't make his own choice. I didn't care for the dad storyline because I didn't like the dad. I thought that breaking the pact and just finding him by ourselves would have been the better, more logical option. But before I made that choice, I Googled it, and what I gathered is that the game perceives the good option as keeping the pact, so I said, fine, keep the pact and damn yourself for all eternity for a man that hates you, because they couldn't communicate right. Like, I feel like the roadblock between Wyll and his dad was just not well thought out. Overall, I just wish they gave Wyll more agency and didn't confine his story to being the fairy tale hero, because the biggest complaint for him is that he's boring compared to the other companions, which is the truth, even though you had to work to make someone who is a warlock pact with the fiend boring. Like, I feel like you had to take the extra mile to make him boring. Next up, we have Karlach. My unpopular opinion on Karlach, honestly, is that I just didn't get the hype. She got pretty much the same treatment as Wyll because of all their major stuff happening in Act 3. And even the little engine thing you could do for her with Daemon wasn't a huge story development. I haven't done her romance either, so maybe that's why I'm missing a lot of stuff from her. But I wasn't drawn to her character in any way, and I don't know why. I I understand that the appeal to her, or the appeal of her for everyone, is that she's like this big barbarian, but she's all happy and bubbly. But I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of the contrast. But you can't have another dark and brooding character when every other companion is dark and brooding, except maybe like, Gale and Wyll. So, you know, I get why that was the choice they made with her, but for me, it just didn't really hit. I also didn't have her in my party when I went to go fight Gortash, so I know I missed the emotional connection there. But I brought her back to his corpse, and she had her monologue about life, and I was like, oh, that's sad. Okay, moving on. Uh, and maybe it was because they had established from the beginning that she was gonna die, and I didn't want to emotionally invest in her because I was like, well, kind of what's the point? Which makes me sound horrible, but it's the truth. And I mean, that's the extent of my Karlach opinions because her story wasn't really connected to the main story, and I just wasn't all that interested. And again, her and Wyll both suffer from the same thing, is that their stories are not really connected to the main story. And you can even, a big part of Wyll's story in Act 1 is Joaquin's rest. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the burning inn that's on fire. And if you go there with him, you can save the counselor, which he knows. And I mean, you could just completely not do that and then miss a part of Wyll's story. So yeah, biggest thing for Karlach and Wyll both is that they suffer from lack of content and lack of the content that they have being involved in the main story. Next, I'll talk about Jaheira slash Halsin slash Minsk. Minsk? I can't say his name. Because tell me who was seriously taking them out in their party when they were added to the camp. I mean, two druids and another barbarian is kind of like, well, no bard? Okay. And yes, I know you can reclass the characters, but for me, I didn't like doing that because I felt like it was a betrayal to their characters, if you know what I mean. And yes, yes, let me just make Jaheira a rogue sorcerer real quick. That makes sense. Um, I didn't like Halsin really as a character because I thought he was stupid, and he does admit to the stupidity of leaving with the humans in Act 1, but then he leaves his grove to come with us. And after Kaga just tried to wipe out the tieflings. I don't think you can demote her to level 1 and everything is going to be fine and dandy. He left the grove under the command of someone I can't remember and thinks Kaga can't just try and overthrow her. Okay. And yes, the Shadow Druids and Ketheric Thorm corruption, but in order to be corrupted, I believe there had to already be a bit of corruption there. And so obviously if he went for Kaga, that was probably because she was already feeling evil thoughts anyway. And I just didn't like the addition of Halsin was definitely not necessary, and the only reason they added him was because everyone was thirsting for Woodland Daddy in early access. And I just think that was the fan service that we didn't need. For Jaheira, I only had to restart the Moonrise Towers fight once to keep her alive, but she was okay. I'm not nostalgia baited because I haven't played the Divinity Original Sin or whichever game she came from. She was okay, but the Druids are actually pretty OP in the late game when they get the Owlbear. Like, that was crazy. I was just like one-shotting everyone because she got like 3 turns in a row. I know Halsin could do that as well, but I didn't want him in my party, so I took Jaheira with me. And I actually liked her commentary in Baldur's Gate because she had a lot to say about the things that was going on. And then I found out she had children by randomly stumbling upon her house, and I was quite surprised. Minsk, I don't have any other opinions on him because I never had him in my party. And once I got him, it was kind of like, okay. His storyline was also okay, again, because I'm not emotionally connected to Jaheira and his, like, storyline. Him being the Stone Lord, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Cool. I liked Boo. He was cute. But other than that, nothing much. Now we have Gale on the chopping block. He's interesting because there's two ways his character could go. Either power hungry incel or nice guy who's a good human being. And for me in my playthrough, he constantly kept going back and forth in Acts 1 and 2 and in the beginning of Act 3. I assume it was because it was in the middle of the patches 3 and 4 where he was super buggy. And it's still a bit buggy, but at the end of my playthrough, he was like, yes, I'm gonna get the crown for Mystra and be back in her good graces. Because all of Act 3, I was like, no, I'm not giving you the crown, loser. And I almost didn't even do the book stealing mission in Act 3 because committing crimes out in broad daylight is kind of hard. I thought it was interesting that they put him in a relationship with a goddess. He was also very full of himself in relation to his relationship with Mystra. Like, sir, that's a goddess. Come on. She could kill you. The whole thing with Gale's character is that he wants power, he wants to be better, he feels insecure. Well, I'm sorry, buddy. I don't know. I wanted his meeting with her, with Mystra in Act 3 to be bigger and more grand, like, again, how Merkel's was. And, like, the same thing with Shadowheart. It just wasn't over the top. And I wish they had done more with Mystra than she was just a human. She was just another human. And there was no fun, unique things about her. She was just in a different plane of being. And I don't know a lot of D&D lore, but I think they could have made it more spectacular. I did have Gale a lot in my party because, a good half, like, for at least half of the game because wizards are so overpowered. And I would just be winning fights all the time with him and Lae'zel just spamming attacks. Jaheira, Owlbear, like, this team is on top right now. But other than that, Gale was just, he was there. His cutscenes were cute. And I didn't want him to die and explode with his orb. And it was kind of like, I don't know, I didn't feel a lot of sympathy for him because everything that happened was just his own fault, and now he has to deal with the consequences of his actions. Like, but I still didn't want him to die, and Mistra's kind of like, she's not a very good goddess, so I did feel a little bad for him in terms of Mystra, but again, not that bad, because, it's just the consequences of your actions, bud. Let's talk about Astarion. I was very neutral towards Astarion at first, and then in Act 1, I really didn't like him, and being on Reddit did not help my dislike for him, because I would see everyone just foaming at the mouth for Astarion, and I didn't understand because he's annoying and rude, and those types of people just aren't my vibe. He was also, like, not my favorite as a character in my party for me, because I don't do the stealth stuff, and I just like charging in head first and exploding everyone and then mashing them with 7 attacks in a row. So the rogue build just wasn't for me. Him being a vampire was interesting because from what I've read on D&D standards, and just in the game in general, everyone hates vampires, and the fact that these people were so willing to have a vampire, a Githyanki, and a Shar worshipper just in their midst was kind of crazy. And I was also playing as a drow, which, right, I know, who's surprised? Everyone was playing as a drow. They also had a drow in there, which, crazy killer combo was a bit odd. Because those are, like, the 4 most dangerous things in Faerun, might be. Like, Gale and Wyll should have been hightailing it out of there. I would not feel safe. And I get, tadpole, you kind of have to sacrifice your morals and whatever. But still. During Act 2, my opinion changed on Astarion a bit because I got his cutscenes with the scars and stuff. And he was more personable and agreeable. Something just changed in his attitude. And I thought, okay, whatever. I understand he's an abuse survivor and he's a victim. I know that. And with his character, there are two ways for him to go. And in Act 1, a lot of it was I was a victim, and now I'm going to put others through the same cycle of abuse that I went through, which, not okay. But watching him heal and go through his journey is really rewarding. And I was more emotional at Cazador's death scene than Karlach's emotional monologue, which is very odd since as a character I disliked Astarion more than Karlach. Like I didn't really dislike Karlach, she just wasn't that interesting to me. The sexualization of Astarion is interesting to me though, and I don't know where this phenomena came from because all the companions have six packs, so um uh and from what I've seen is that people like it because people like him because he berates you, is a difficult person, and is just difficult and doesn't treat you very well, which is also very concerning because guys, that's not normal. And then to sexualize him after knowing he's been through 200 years of abuse is really crazy in my opinion, and it always seems to be the same kind of character types that are always getting that treatment, which needs to be studied in a lab, I think. It couldn't be me though, I'll tell you that. So where I stand with Astarion is he had a good story arc, and he had a lot more screen time than literally all the other companions, which also contributed to his popularity within the fandom. And I wonder why. I know why. It's because he's a white twink. But and I think it was him and Shadowheart at the top of that Reddit list I saw comparing their screen time. So I'll just leave it with that. Next up, we have God's favorite princess, Shadowheart, whose story I also liked because it was interesting and got more into the lore world building aspect. Why did I say that weird? Aspect of Shar than Gale's God storyline did with Mystra. With Mystra, you always had to ask Gale the questions about her. It wasn't just already woven into the story. But with Shar, it would just come up organically in the world and story. I mean, Act 2 literally had the Gauntlet of Shar. I know who their favorite god is. It was in your face, and I like the world building, I like the atmosphere, I like lore. Her storyline is interesting, but I also think she suffers from Chosen One syndrome because we learn that she's supposed to be Shar's next right-hand woman after Vikanya. And I don't know that chick either because, again, I didn't play Divinity Original Sin. So there was no nostalgia for me again. And I don't know that timeline. So it's weird to me that Shar has this chick and then Shadowheart would be immediately next in line. I know everyone lives forever in the D&D universe, but I don't know. I feel like it's all just very coincidental that we'd come across Shar's next chosen one. That's just me. Her story was similar to Astarion's in that she was in this abusive upbringing and she can either break free from that abuse or can go further into it and become Shar's mouthpiece. Obviously, I did the Selûnite Shadowheart route because I did the good route. It's so much more rewarding, clearly supposed to be the good option. And now I want to talk about her Act 3 story. One, where is my Grand Shar reveal? Again, all of the god reveals were so anticlimactic, and Shar was this huge part of the story, and we're constantly hearing about her and being like, oh, it's Shar, oh, and then all we get is this statue and this mirror. Like, okay, where is my Shar vision? I need her to be standing in front of me. The choice between keeping her parents alive or K-wording them was I kept them alive because that's what I know the game wanted me to do, despite them begging to die. Because if you do K-word them, then Shadowheart is depressed the rest of the game. And duh, her parents died. Of course she would be, but my point still stands. And she does have a little dialogue that's like, I feel kind of better that they're gone. But she's just kind of, sad. Which, again, fine. But still. I feel like her story was building up to some great moment, and then Act 3 fell a bit flat. Because after you fight Vicania, you just walk into the back room and ta-da, here's her parents. I feel like they could have done something else besides the parents still being alive as the big Act 2 reveal of her story, because let's be real, her human mom should definitely be dead by now. But I get they had to make some life-altering dilemma at the end of her arc, so we get what we get. But I feel like the story could have taken a different direction than, look, your parents you thought were dead are still alive. I also feel like she's not a very good Shar worshiper, because she literally couldn't keep it a secret from me an hour after we met. We'd be in the Druid Cave in Act 1 and looking at the murals of Shar and Selûne on the wall, and she'd gasp and be like, I hate Selûne, and then act surprised when I clocked her. Like, girl, you were not hiding that. Up next, we have everyone's favorite frog, Lae'zel. I literally didn't know what a Githyanki was before this game, but I think their designs are actually really cool. At first, I wasn't on board because I was like, oh, they're ugly, but they're so unique compared to all the other races, and they just grew on me. I was like, yeah, I can get behind this. Lae'zel also has the coolest hair in this game to me. Why is it not an option in the character creation? I don't know. I really liked it. I liked her story in Act 1. And then after you do the Kresh, she basically gets put on the back burner for all of Act 2. Act 2 was Shadowheart's act. I mean, it literally was. And it's very special treatment because none of the other companions got a whole act dedicated to them. You can put off doing the Kresh until Act 2, because I actually did that on my very first playthrough, and I was about to do the Night Song part of the Gauntlet of Shar, and Lae'zel was like, if you don't stop and turn around right now to do the Kresh, I'm leaving. I'm not sure why I put it off so long, because then in my second playthrough, I did it before I did the Underdark in Act 1, and Lae'zel's story, like, is just the Kresh. So, I don't know, I thought her development before and then after it was really good. And if you don't somewhat placate Lae'zel, there's multiple points in the story where she just leaves to go do what she wants, and usually ends up dead when she runs off on her own, so What I didn't get is that immediately after disowning Blackith, if that's what you do, she hops onto the Orpheus train and is like, he's the savior of my people, I live and breathe for him. Like, think about yourself for a second, okay? Jeez. And I know she had a line that was like, I can think of myself after I defeat Blackith. Like, okay, I still think it's odd how you can go from one extreme to the other in 2 seconds. That doesn't seem very mentally stable. I also think it kind of contradicts her story of being afraid of being nothing and having no honor among her people to finding herself and doing things for herself. And then immediately after she's free from tyrannical rule number 1, she wants to throw herself in with potential tyrannical ruler number 2, because for all she knows, Orpheus could be a liar and manipulator, because all of the history about him could just be fake. Obviously, the Githyanki history is inaccurate, and how would she know if anything about Orpheus is true? She literally has like 5 lines that she says to him. Other than that, her development was pretty good. And even the way she spoke to you as you gained her approval changed, which just shows that, I mean, that was the same for, like, her and Astarion. I mean, all the characters, but, like, most notably, you could see it with her and Astarion, so I enjoyed that. Minthara, I'm not even gonna touch that one until she actually has a storyline. I know they say they're working on her content, but time will tell. Because I wouldn't actually commit to an evil playthrough unless there was actually, like, some good content to go with it, which I think is one of the biggest downsides of this game, is that they have this evil route, but they didn't flesh it out at all, and maybe it's because they thought no one was gonna do it, or maybe they were going for a, well, if you do bad things, there's not gonna be a lot of content because actions have consequences, which is like, if you choose in Act 1 to massacre the Drove, you just lock yourself out of, like, everything related to the Tieflings, which is, you know, a lot of content since the Tieflings are in every act of the game. But yeah, no thoughts on Minthara because I haven't even attempted to recruit her because I don't really see the gain in that. Now that all of the characters have been thoroughly degraded, there are some individual things that I want to talk about. The fact that the companions talk to each other while you're out adventuring is just like, wow, what a concept. It makes the characters feel alive and like what's going on and happening in the world matters, which literally every other game I've ever played has never done anything like that, to where companions react to a good amount of the content that's happening. Because yeah, sure, in some games companions will say one-off liners here and there, but it's nothing compared to what Baldur's Gate 3 did. And it's just like they talk to each other, you know. They acknowledge that there are other people with you, and it doesn't feel like you're just there's, you know, they're just NPCs, right? I liked the more contained story areas of the game, like the Creche and to the extent the Shadowlands. I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it was very, the story was just really good. It really just chef's kiss. It was just something in my brain, like, clicked. You know what I mean? Oh, it was delicious. Or like the House of Hope. Don't even get me started on that one. That was delicious. I know I haven't really talked about Raphael a lot, but honestly, he was very sidelined in my playthrough. Um, I didn't take his deals. I just agreed. Like, I was like, no, I don't want your deal. Then I went to the House of Hope to steal the Orphic Hammer, which I think the majority of people did. So yeah, there was not a lot of Raphael content for me to consume. Other than like House of Hope, which everyone already like, oh, that was so good. Like, unmatched. The House of Grief fight took me 3 hours to beat because I had got to that area like a week after they patched it, so you couldn't cheese it anymore. And even then, I still like was just saving after every turn, so if something bad happened, I could just go back and reload because that fight was crazy. It had me ripping my hair out, and they need to do something about that because that, no, very unenjoyable. And my party was level 12, so like there was nothing else I could do. The House of Hope fight was easier than this. The end game fight was easier than this, which is crazy. But the end boss fight was also really annoying. And I know it's the boss fight, but that one grinded my gears. I didn't actually have to redo it, but just the tedium of trying to, like, because all of my characters are, like, they were on the bottom floor, and then Orpheus and Lae'zel were going to the portal. So only Orpheus and Lae'zel were fighting the Elder Brain at the end. And I was trying to very hard get all of my characters up to that portal, but it was just not happening. Waiting for that epilogue. I didn't even want to finish the game, honestly, until those came out, but I didn't want to wait that long because I wanted to start a Dirge playthrough, but I wasn't going to start the Dirge playthrough until I actually finished the game. This game has the replayability every open world game wishes they had. There's just no competition. The fact that every race and every class has different dialogues and you can mix and match the classes to where you get even more unique dialogue is crazy. And that's the kind of detail I want in all RPGs. Nudge nudge, cough cough, Starfield, looking at you. I tried to play Starfield like a month after I was playing Baldur's Gate, and then immediately I was like, no, I want to play Baldur's Gate again. So that should tell you all you need to know. And like I said, I'm currently doing my first Dirge run, and I like it better already than playing as Tav because I feel like there's more motivation and story behind it, which I get was the point, obviously, to have like an actual backstory, but I enjoy that. Now, for some of the top things from the game that I just loved were Ketheric Thornfight / Merkle reveal, yes. House of Hope, duh. Withers as a whole, he was amazing. The House of Healing scene with Malice Thorn, that one really had me floored because I was playing that at night and then I walked I walked into the House of Healing and I was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" The Emperor's Baldurin reveal, that also floored me. The fact that he had two character reveals was kind of funny. Orin's character design, I was obsessed with that. I really liked it. The Saravok fight, I liked that. That was cool. The Owlbear Cub and Scratch, anything they did ever. And there's a lot of other little things, but these were all just things that really stayed with me. Things that, were in my brain a lot. Also, I guess, like I said earlier, the Kresh, I really enjoyed that story. So yeah, that, basically all of the game. I know it felt like I was harping on the companions a lot, but I really enjoyed this game. I really did. I loved the choice. I loved everything about it, honestly, other than maybe some little minor things. But again, it wasn't like I was thinking about all that stuff while I was playing the game. These are just thoughts after the fact, but I still love the game. So that wraps up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you made it to the end, congratulations. Thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you if I do another video. Bye.